All right, it says we are live. Hello, hello, and happy Friday for everyone who is tuning in live. And of course, happy International Women's Day during Women's History Month and all things women today. I'm excited to have this conversation. Thank you for your patience in us starting. Had some technical difficulties. But nonetheless, we are here. We are here. We're ready to have this impactful conversation. I have with me my guest, Miss Aria Leighty, and we have been connected on LinkedIn for quite some time. And so when I decided that I wanted to do this series on, leveraging the platform, I went out to the people that I just know, like they live and breathe LinkedIn and they are on this platform and not just on the platform, just being on it, but actively engaging, actively building community. And so I'm glad. I don't know what made us connect. I'm glad we did. And I'm even happier that we get to have this conversation today. So before we get into the details and the nitty gritty of LinkedIn and all of its amazingness, I would just love for you to share with the audience who isn't familiar with you, perhaps a little bit about your background, the Cliff Notes version of your career, and what brought you to the place of the work that you do today.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Aria Leighty. I am the networking queen and the founder of Show the Fuck Up Media. And I think we actually connected in the Women of Color podcasting group like years ago. I think that's where we made that. So networking, see, brings you the best people. Join the communities. I am a visibility and community strategist, and I help women of color and queer folk show the fuck up in the world.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about that. And thank you for refreshing my memory. They shut it down so long ago that I forgot all about it. So tell us about the work that you do today. Like, what is Show the Fuck Up Media, and how are you supporting other women of color in doing just that?
Yeah. So being a visibility and a brand strategist and a networking queen, I have worked with a lot of different brands, a lot of clients. And honestly, last year, a lot of things weren't feeling super aligned anymore, who I was serving and how I was showing up. And I wanted to take a lot of these connections and these, amazing people in my network and make it accessible without being behind all of these really big paywalls. I feel like there's only a select few that are getting a lot of the visibility, right? And it's like, if you already have the resources to pay tens of thousands of dollars to a visibility strategist, maybe your message is one that we've already heard before, maybe. So I wanted to take it into a media model where like the content is free or very low ticket, and that it is branded by the different very aligned sponsors. So I took a lot of the connections that I have, a lot of the speaking gigs, a lot of the communities that I work with, and I put that into The Plug, which is a free newsletter. And I literally plug you into the best networking events, speaking gigs, and podcast interviews. And then there's digital courses. We're going to launch a new podcast, and we have in-person virtual events and an in-person conference coming in September in Honolulu.
Oh, nice, nice. And where are you physically again?
I'm in Honolulu. Yeah, Native Hawaiian in Honolulu.
Nice. Wonderful place to be. Second to that is San Diego.
I do love San Diego. I do love San Diego so much.
Yes. Okay. So let's get into brand and visibility. Obviously, we both, support women in this space. I talk a lot about, the strategic side of networking and building those relationships and learning how to leverage your relationships to be able to, either advance in your career or advance and grow your business and partnerships and whatnot. But before people can even get to that strategic side of it, they gotta be visible. They gotta show up, and they gotta be okay with being seen and being heard. So tell us a little bit about how you help support, people who are in that space navigate some of that inner chatter and that fear of stepping out and building their brand and elevating their own voice.
Yeah, it's actually very timely because right before we got on, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I haven't been on a podcast interview in like 6 months. I've been very hidden. I haven't shown the fuck up in a lot of ways because of this, like, the different work that I was doing to get back into alignment. And it's, yeah, we do have all of this inner chatter. I think that they're, again, back to the select few that we've seen showing up in the rooms or being coined as, they're the thought leaders and these are the people that are the experts. It's often people that don't move through the world like us, speak like us, show up like us. So I think that even if we are okay with being visible, we still bring a little bit of this energy of like how we think we're supposed to show up, how we are allowed to go into the room, how much of our authenticity we're allowed to like turn up, and especially depending on which room. Like, is that a little too spicy to talk about? Am I okay to wear like my big hoop earrings and am I okay to show up in my Hawaiianness? So yeah, it's really getting back to remember that anything that you're telling yourself, like the reasons you can't show up, the things that you think are holding you back, the things that make you feel like maybe an outcast in the rooms or, a rebel on the podcast mic, those are all of the reasons why you need to be showing up. That's all of the reasons why we need to be taking up more space and in 100% authenticity so that we are, really making sure that we're inspiring other people that do look like us, speak like us, move like us, like, oh, okay, success and visibility is possible,
Yeah. So a couple of things, thoughts that come to mind. So when I talk about networking and my framework, I have people do what I call the value assessment, right? And so the point of the value assessment, so not typical values, right, that we, identify with, but your value assessment in terms of your strengths, your skills, your knowledge, and even your opportunities. And I have
Yes.
people do that because I know, having, been through this process and having walked clients through it, the minute that you start to tell yourself, I don't have anything to offer, or I don't have anything to say, or whatever, you will self-sabotage and you'll talk yourself out of it. So the point in doing the value assessment ahead of time is so that you can build some of that inner confidence within
Yeah.
yourself to see what you are bringing to the table, and then also acknowledging where the gaps are, but not as a stumbling block, but more so for you to reach out to people who can help fill that gap and be confident in saying, this is a gap that I have. I see that this is a strength of yours. Would love to partner with you. So when it comes to, the work that you do, again, breaking through some of that inner chatter, when we hear the word branding, it's about the colors and it's about, all of those things, right? But we know your brand is basically what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's like what you stand for. So how do you help people really peel back the onion to get to the core of, this is who I am?
Yeah. I love that because that's exactly what I talk about too. Is like, why are we talking about all these aesthetics? Your brand is how people are feeling about you once you just left that room, right? So even if they're not talking about you, they're thinking something in their head. When they see you walk into the next event, they're like, either like, or like, oh God, like beeline, beeline away. And I mean, as long as you're showing up in your authenticity, I mean, both of those are valuable interactions depending on, how you're rubbing people. But yeah, we really tap into magic, mission, and message. And that's another thing is like getting into that real visual of like how you want to show up. Because I think that a lot of people, they're not intentional. And that's the thing that I talk about is intentional networking. How do you want people to feel with your interaction? We forget that we're being perceived because we're so busy like perceiving everyone else. Like, get really intentional, get into your body, visualize how you want to own that room, and tap into that magic, mission, and message. Like, what lights you up about your industry? What are you bringing? What type of magic are you bringing to your industry that nobody else is doing? Your value, like, what are you, what experiences led you to the point where you can be this person in the room that is either like the top referral partner or the expert into that space or onto that stage? hype yourself up. Like I love to challenge my inner chatter, like, because sometimes I'm like, who am I to go on this? And I'm like, girl, who are you? Like, you have built communities of 10,000. You have, consulted with the top like communities. Like, this, you've been doing it for 20 years. Like, you got this. What are you talking about? Like, really just fight back and like talk ish right back to the voice that's like telling you, questioning everything, right?
So I'm curious because obviously for many of us, this is a journey, right? Like we don't come out the womb super confident with our thought leadership and ready to network with the world. And certainly there are, society doesn't necessarily groom us, both men and women, to, be networkers and be confident in how we show up and find our own voice. Like there is a pathway that we are led down until we, become divergents and decide this is who I am and this is how I want to show up. So I'm curious, what were some of the catalysts for you where you were starting to recognize that, I have something to say that does not sound like everything that I'm hearing, or there's a pull in me that needs to show up authentically so that I can give others permission to do so? What were some of those things that were happening initially for you that gave you that push to say, you know what? I haven't seen this, but I'm going to be it?
Yeah. I think in terms of networking specifically, so the way that I define intentional networking is building and nurturing long-term mutually beneficial relationships. And I think that it's something that actually always has come naturally to me. I just didn't realize that that was networking, and the way that I had been taught to network, especially in my corporate career, very short lasting corporate career, it was very coming from like a sales and marketing approach. And that's not what it is. Like, you need to take your sales hat off before you walk into the room to build relationships, right? Like, we are doing human to human connection. And I was 19 and I was a recruiter and I was building these relationships, right? And I had connected with the CEO of a company that was very small. It's not something that the business showed any value in the place that I was working for, right? But he said, can you check in with me in 3 months? Like, I would love to reconnect. And so I put a little note on the calendar. Like, I remember my coworker who was like a top earner was like, that's such a waste of time. Like, here's like a list of like all of our target people. But I called him in 3 months and I checked in and I remembered things about our conversation. And he was like, I can't believe that you even remembered that conversation. Like, that's so funny. I had nothing to quote unquote offer you, right? But that's the thing, is like nurturing relationships. And he ended up giving me a connection. And he was like, my friend is the interim CFO for this tech startup. And he's building his entire C-suite and their, engineer side. So he ended up passing me a referral for the largest deal that came through the company up until that point, just because I had nurtured the relationship. And I remember him saying so specifically that like he couldn't believe that I saw value in that connection and that he appreciated that I even thought about his company and remembered it. And I thought to myself, like, that's how all people should be. I mean, for one, that's just how you treat people. But for two, you never know who somebody's connected to. You never know where somebody's going to end up later. Like, yeah, he's the CEO of this very small gardening company now, but you don't know where he's going to be in 5 years. And that's where that long-term like comes into play. Networking is a long game. It's like really showing up continuously for your people, even if you think that they don't have something to offer you, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I love that we share the same philosophy around networking being more so on the relationship building side than it is on the like quick exchange of contact information. And I think for a while, I mean, that's what was modeled, right? Or when you thought of networking, that's what the experience was, which is why a lot of women shy away from that. And, not even just women, obviously women of color and whatnot, but you see the impact or the effect of it for those who are in corporate who don't see networking within the organization as part of the job or as part of their
Mhm.
way to grow and advance. And then certainly from a business perspective, I don't know how anyone can be in business and not be networking or building relationships, right? I guess everybody in business can be networking, but really building these genuine relationships is key. So one of the things that you said earlier that I want to dig into is around that taking your sales hat off.
Yes.
So if you're like me, I get because at one point I took coach off of my profile because I did not want to get solicited. But
Oh
oh
my.
my gosh, the number of people who, between the invitations or the in mails or you name it, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, do's and don'ts on LinkedIn, like what helps people be effective, where they can build a strong community of supporters as we have versus individuals who don't. So talk to me a little bit about some of your experiences on LinkedIn as far as like things that you've seen other people do well
Mm.
and or things that you've seen where you're kind of like, I would never coach one of my clients to do this.
Yeah. It's funny. Now I'm a top LinkedIn fan. I used to be like a top LinkedIn hater. Like I had this idea that it was all dude bros making those like sales pitches, that it was very like salesy energy, very corporate. And I literally said so many times, my people are not there, like disruptors, women of color, leaders, like they're not over there. So I'm like not even going to be on that platform. But now I'm obsessed with it and I love it. And I have found so many people. I've only really been super active on LinkedIn for probably like 3 or 4 months. And it has just been like this gold mine of referrals and everything like that. But yeah, there is a lot, like you were calling before we started, the pitch slapping in the DMs. And any social media, I think what we forget is social, right? Like we're supposed to be social on social media. So when I enter any room, I look at it as a networking opportunity, which is again building relationships, right? So this is just a virtual room that we walked into, and I hope that you wouldn't walk into a networking event or a party or a gala and be like, hire me, and like walk up and like spin somebody around when they're doing something and being like, do you want a free website? Like that's not how you would like engage with people, right? So I think approaching it and thinking that same way, taking your sales hat off when you're about to get into that LinkedIn room and really being social. It's not content media. I know that like content creators really took over those platforms. Marketers do that. They swarm on something and make everything into like a sales and marketing opportunity. And there's a time and place for that. But when you are on LinkedIn, it is time to build relationships. And the way that I do that is like commenting on people's stuff, really hyping people up, sharing, sending DMs to congratulate people. Cold DMs are fine, but it really needs to be with the intention of being like, I see you. I love what you're doing. Would love to connect further. Let me know how I can support you type of vibe. So yes, I do get a ton of pitch slaps constantly. And it feels very much like, hey girl, hey MLM messages from these like very successful people that you would not like, expect that from. People that I think are doing it really well. I think we have a shared connection, Raven. She is like always commenting on people's stuff. And I had made a post that was clearly trying to like get the attention of a specific sponsor that I want for my event, like tagged them and like had made a comment. And she left a thing that was like, I never knew about this brand and now I do because of you, and I ordered it. And like that's how you show up for your people, because like now that's one more comment for that sponsor to see that had made a direct impact. That's how you show up.
Yeah, Raven is a godsend, super supporter, all of the things, a super connector, you name it. I love the advice that you gave around like how you show up, right? It's the same thing as if you are going to be in an open space conference networking room. So a couple of the things that I've gotten recently in recent months is, once the person is just like, oh, I've been on here long enough. I've been on here since 2007, right? So I've seen it all. I've seen all the trends. I've seen the marketers take over. I've seen it all. And it's like I've been active on it too. So there are things that I've tested and tried and decided, okay, no, I'm not going to do that because it wasn't authentic to me. But,
Yeah.
things like, you get the connection request and then, or you accept it. And then the next thing the person is just like, so what are your goals? Pause. I don't know you. Like, you wouldn't walk up to somebody in the middle of the street or at the grocery store at a networking event and the first thing that you ask them are, what are your goals? Like, who's sharing that with you? But
Yes.
that is one that I see. Or even in the invitations, I just had to decline a lady, and usually I'm very open to like connecting with most people as long as I know they're not gonna like turn around and pitch slap me. But her first thing was, I'm looking to connect with more coaches of color. And pause. You don't know me, right? Like that, to some people that might have been like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. But you don't know how I feel about that. You don't know anything about my philosophy. Like, my immediate thing was, so you're only connecting with me because I'm a coach of color? Pass, hard pass. And so it's just, you just have to think about it from the perspective of, if you were going to walk into a room, what would you say to that other human being? And
Yeah.
show up that way on this platform. I've seen anytime that I do like cold outreach in the sense of like their second or third connections that I don't know, I'm always upfront of like, hey, I'm looking to connect with more women leaders. Or when I first moved here to San Diego and I knew no one, I reached out to a whole bunch of HR people in Southern California. And I was just like, hey, I'm an HR consultant. I don't know anyone here. I'm looking to connect with HR people. So I'm always looking at it. What is my real intent behind connecting with that person? And then letting them know that. And then they get to choose or self-select whether or not it's for them or not. But I don't know that I'd ever go to someone and be like, oh, I'm looking to connect with more Hispanic coaches or more Hispanic leaders.
Like, you just beeline across the room. Like, I told myself I was going to meet one brown or black woman tonight. Yes.
And you're it.
Take a picture with me. We won.
It's amazing. It looks like Raven has entered the chat.
Know,
Hello,
right?
Raven.
Happy
to have you here. So let's talk about, the platform itself. So you do a lot of posting similar to Raven. You do a lot of posting, you do a lot of commenting, you do a lot of engagement. How does that align with your business strategy, or is it not even part of your business strategy? Is it just what you're doing as part of building your own professional network?
Yeah. Well, I would say that networking is my top visibility strategy. It always has been. It will outlive every, cool trend or like, fancy lead magnet that's out there. But I am really on there specifically. I actually have not been posting as much as I want to. And like, I have these thoughts and I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be such a good LinkedIn post. And then I like go to do it and it never happens. But I use it to go see, truly the intention of it is to see what my people are up to. What are they celebrating? What are they engaging in? Because that's going to be really good information for me to know how to show up for them. My strategy in networking is knowing how to show up for my people. So if I see something that I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to be on Femme-Led News with Raven, or oh my gosh, you have to be, on this podcast or on this LinkedIn, then I'm going to like connect the people. But I can't do that unless I'm like peeking into their world and knowing like what they're the expert in, what they're struggling with, what they're trying to do. There's people out looking for jobs and clients, and I'm like, I know the exact person that I need to like tag in this post for you, and that is the strategy. Show up generously and people will come back tenfold.
Absolutely. It's so funny to hear you say that you have not been posting as often, because I kid you not, there's not a day that I am on here on my feed that like, and maybe it's just because you're liking or you're commenting, but like you are on my feed every single day, multiple times a day.
And that's the beauty of LinkedIn that is not on any other platform, is that you have seen my name and you have seen what I'm about. And like, whenever I'm doing anything, whenever I'm like thinking about showing up intentionally, it's how do I want to be remembered? How do I want to make people feel? And the way that I want to be remembered is being a master connector, like the biggest hype girl, the biggest supporter. So the way that I'm showcasing that to you on LinkedIn is like, damn, I'm always seeing Aria's name. She is always hyping somebody up. She's always commenting. So it's like, even if you don't feel like you have something, to type into like a long form content, or you're like, I don't have all this like beautifully well written, articulate, thought leadership post for the day. Like, just showing up is a visibility strategy, because your name is popping up in front of every single one of those people's network when you're commenting, when you're engaging. And if those are your people, like really it's the people that you align with, that you're sharing values with, that are you're like-minded in your approach in business, then the people that they're connected to are going to be your people too. So I get so many requests that I know come from me being visible on other people's posts. So that is like the top reason why I will be a LinkedIn like stan till the day I die, is because like it's so easy to get in front of people, and I don't need to like lip sync on a reel or like tap dance on a, and point to text. I don't have to do any of that. I can just like show up authentically and be like, oh my gosh, girl, you're doing something so amazing. Like, I'm so happy for you. And then boom, I'm like, seen in front of all these people.
Absolutely. And that brings up two important points, is that, there is a lot when it comes to branding and visibility and putting yourself out there. People are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to write a newsletter. I don't want to do all this other stuff. And that is fine. And to your point, this is the one platform that you don't have to create your own original content and still gain visibility and credibility in terms of what what it is that you're about. And then the second piece is, the algorithm, the more you like or engage with certain types of content, the algorithm knows that. And so it will purposely start to not only show you to people who are in that same space, but when you do post, then you're being put in front of people who have that same level of interest. So, I know some of you who are watching this, and of course who are listening on the podcast, you're not looking to leverage this as a business strategy. But I think regardless of where you sit, whether it's entrepreneurial or in the corporate space, right? Like, you have something to say. You have skills, you have experience like that you've amassed throughout your career. And while we might, especially us as women, we'll be like, oh, well, everybody knows that, right? And I went through that phase when I was thinking about networking. I was just like, well, everybody knows that. No, they don't. They
No, they
don't.
don't. And it's clear every single time I go to a networking event, like, I'm always like, this is common knowledge. Like, there's nothing else I can share that like people don't understand, But then I go and I'm like, oh, okay. I see. This still needs to be like talked about like 2,000 more times, because people need to like unlearn a lot of stuff, or it's really just like the intentionality. So yes, yeah. Absolutely. And as far as content, the days of being like, 5 things you need to do to increase your Instagram engagement. Like, I know that those were really cool for a hot minute, but like, that doesn't need to be the way that you deliver your message. It doesn't have to be wrapped up into a pretty Canva bow. It doesn't have to be, like outlined perfectly. I am the queen of typos. Like, if you ever see a long post, it's because I am on one and I'm like feverishly like, or like
Twitter fingers.
Yes. And so, there's extra commas, and there might be like, and it doesn't matter, because people understand it's from my real voice, how I would talk if I got really excited in a room with you, right? I'm not going to go back through and waste time like over analyzing or making sure that like, I'll make sure the right yours are used and theirs, because that's a bit a personal pet peeve of mine. But beyond that, like, I don't care. You get what I'm saying. And this is how I would deliver it to you if we were in a room. And that's what lights me up and makes me excited, is putting it together like that. If I had this idea and I journaled on it, and then I went into Canva and I tried to do a template and I put it into my brand colors and all of that, like, it would be wasted, and it would be watered down in a way that like, the message wouldn't get across in the energy that I really wanted to like display it in.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just from a technical perspective, when it comes to LinkedIn, like what tools, what features do you use the most, or have you found the most beneficial, either through what you use it for or how you advise your clients?
I don't feel like I've even like dove into all of the bells and whistles. Like commenting is my top. Hitting that comment button and that reaction button and, you know, sending people DMs. I don't think that I've even began to explore a lot of what LinkedIn can offer, but I think that also shows you that you don't need to have this like expert knowledge of the platform in order to get clients, subscribers, money, collaborators, podcast opportunities. Like I've done all of that using the very bare bones that I remembered from like 2008 when I had it as a recruiter, like literally like I look like, you know, definitely millennial energy of being like, what is this? You know, too complicated. But I mean, let that be a message to people that feel like you have to know all of like the coolest tricks. And they are coming out with really rad things that I think LinkedIn experts could definitely, you know, walk you through, but don't wait until you know all of that in order to like start showing up on this platform.
Absolutely. And how much, if you had to like put a percentage around how much time you spend networking on the platform versus in person, whether it's things that you're creating or things that you're going to, what does that mix look like for you?
Well, now that the world has opened back up, I'm like back out there as much as as much as I can be. So I would say that I'm 80% in person engaging and then 20% online. And that 20% is split up on LinkedIn, Instagram, and then really taking advantage of the communities that I am a part of. I think that people really, they join networking groups that have this like gold mine of like connection where you can connect with people, you know, that you don't have to go to their Zooms. You can go into their circle or your Facebook group or whatever it is. And you guys are missing out on like so many opportunities to really like build a know, like, and trust factor and like nurture those relationships in that way. So that's another thing that I do is like add to my calendar to make sure that once a week at least I'm going in and I'm checking again, seeing what my people are up to, commenting, hyping them up on their stuff. Because then when it comes time for me to make an ask, they're like, oh, I remember Aria. Like she's been, you know, commenting on the stuff. She's been showing up. She's been making the connections. It's not just like, oh, I only pop in here when I'm looking for you to buy my product.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. If I think about my my mix, I'm starting. I was very, very heavy on the external until, you know, we all weren't. And then I think I just got a little too comfortable behind the screen. And so now I'm like stepping out. But, you know, the way that I leverage, regardless of whether I'm out and about networking or I'm on the platform, everything has to like there has to be a in-person component to it, right? So if I meet and connect or when I meet and connect with people on LinkedIn, at some point I'm asking whether it's for a virtual coffee or if they're local, then an in-person coffee, right? Because you can't build a relationship just, I mean, maybe you could. I have not been successful in doing that. But you build the relationship when you get to engage with the person. But even when I'm out and about and I meet people, the first thing I'm doing is saying, oh, let's connect on LinkedIn because that's another connection point. So, you know, I say balance it, you know, regardless of what you're most comfortable with, whether that's in person, make sure that you're also bringing it to the social platform as well. Because also it's a way that you can always keep in touch with people, right? Because we lose phone numbers, we lose emails, or emails change if people are changing jobs. And so at least with the LinkedIn, you can always connect and touch base with that person. And then vice versa, it's so important to take that conversation out of the DMs to personalize the experience. And when someone, even when they're sitting across from you on a Zoom screen, you can still feel that person's energy. You can feel their authenticity. You can feel, you know, what it is that they're saying. So I'm a big proponent of leveraging both. And if you meet one in one atmosphere or environment, connect with them on the other.
Yes. Can I just say, that is the number one tip that I have for everybody when they're thinking about going into a room and they're worried and like, forget the elevator pitch, forget all of that stuff. Like, practice active listening, ask people as many questions as you can about them, make it about them, like make them feel like the most important person in that room. And then do not leave that conversation without some sort of like Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever your thing is, email, and have a reason why you're going to connect with them further. Like if you're showing value, be like, send me an email right now so that I don't forget to connect you with that podcast host that I mentioned or anything like that. Because then once they're in your virtual world and you've like built that relationship, now you can nurture it over here. And that really takes the pressure off of you of having to like hit all of your little like touch points and to make sure that they understand what you do and who you work with and who your ideal client is. Like ask questions about them, know how you can show up, and then have another way that you can connect with them. And like people go and do that and they're like, oh my gosh, networking is actually so easy. Like, yeah, because you didn't make it like a song and dance, you know, like just make sure that like you're treating the people like the most important person in the room while you're talking to them, because they are the most important person in the room. And then have that next touch point and always follow up. It was so nice to meet you at blank event. It was so good talking to you about blank, because then when you go and like their story or send them a DM for something, it's also refreshing both of your memories on how you met that person. And then you can just pick that conversation up, because nobody keeps business cards, or if they do, they're in my desk in a big stack. You're not going to remember. And if you don't have a reason to have that, then it's weird to send an email later to be like, let's nurture this relationship and like continue, you know? So do it right then and there.
Right. And so I'm curious, because this is another pushback that I tend to get. I do networking obviously for my business and just because I like to meet people. But I have a very structured system, and I've shared this with others through a masterclass that I've done, where there's the core 155 people, right, at any given point that I am touching base with, right? And whether that touch point is, engaging on LinkedIn or sending emails or meeting in person, right? And so a lot of people hear, oh my gosh, 155 people, that's so much, right? Like they hear the numbers, or they hear, oh, you got to be on LinkedIn, you got to be on IG, then you got to be at this association and this association. And it starts to feel overwhelming in terms of like how much is too much, how much of it is just me being busy for the sake of being busy, and how can I actually leverage or hone in on which communities or which people, activities, whatever, make the most sense. So when you're guiding your clients in terms of, not overdoing it where every single day you're at a networking event just for the sake of it, to the point where they can be intentional and strategic and still be able to manage their time and deepen those relationships over time, what would you say is like some top advice?
Well, definitely quality over quantity, right? Have a game plan. Again, be intentional. If you're only going to these events so you can be like, okay, check, I did that, then that's not really going to, do anything for you. If you do have time to go to a lot of different networking events, go to the same like ones in the community. Just because you went to one doesn't mean like now it's time to go to Chamber of Commerce and now it's time to do this. Like find the rooms you want to be in and then show up pretty consistently so people can constantly remember you. Like we know like the rule of 7 is actually like the rule of 700 now, because when they brought that up, there was only like a few ways to consume information. So people need to constantly see you, hear you, have those little touch points. So show up consistently in the few spaces, even if you think you've already built the relationships. If your people are there, keep showing up there. And then don't make it a rush to be like, okay, there's 50 people in this room. I need to get 40 of my business cards into people's hands. Like if you can walk away with like 2 or 3 super solid, I had a conversation with that person, I know how to show up, I know what the next follow-up is going to be, I exchanged information, like that is a win. And a lot of events, you can see the guest list ahead of time. You can understand who's going to be going there. So you can think, okay, I need to meet with these 3 people. I need to get in front of them. And then the rest are just, like a bonus. But these are the people that I know that I want them to remember me after this event is over.
Yeah, that's really important for conferences, especially now, like most conferences have an app, so you can start connecting with people beforehand. I remember back years ago in my corporate days, I had a manager. Shout out to Sharon Malone. She's on this platform as well. But she, like every networking event, she was just like, your goal is to get at least 3 business cards, right?
Yeah.
And that was like where I didn't know what networking was. Like I was totally like shy and was afraid to talk to anybody. And that was the thing that like, oh, okay, just 3 business cards. I can do that. I can
Yeah.
strike up conversation with 3 people in this room and engage with them and get their business cards. Of course, there was follow up and all that other stuff afterwards, but to your point, my goal is never like how many business cards can I exchange or how many, LinkedIn new connections can I get? It's 3. Let's meet with 3 people, let's connect with 3 people, and then if you connect with more people, great, but the goal is always 3 for me. So I love that you brought that up.
And if you have that solid group, like often, like if you can find that person that you really connect with and that you really like hit it off with, now you guys can navigate the rest of the time together. You can, divide and conquer. You can be like, what is your goal for tonight? Who do you need to meet? This is who I want to meet with. So then while they're out networking, be like, oh my gosh, I found the person that you wanted to connect with. And that's a way to show value, right? Like if you meet somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, I just met the best person that you need to connect with. Let me introduce you guys. Like you've already shown value. People are going to remember that over like a business card being like waved into, somebody's face. But again, building the relationships, but be yourself. Like we're all just humans trying to navigate the scary room. It doesn't matter how long we've been in business. Like it is nerve-wracking. Like those nerves don't go away. Like I have gone up to people or met somebody and said, I don't know anybody here. Like I'm feeling a little bit nervous, or like, wow, this room is super intimidating. And then people are like, oh my gosh, no, like let me introduce you to, so-and-so. And I do the same for other people. People, they appreciate that. They respond to it. I have seen people like a weight being like lifted off their shoulders as soon as somebody has said, I'm feeling nervous. They're like, oh, okay, great. Me too. Let's do this together. And those are some of my, best connections or best clients now, or people that I've met just being like, what am I doing here? Why did I walk into this room?
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. So, a couple of things. We're going to go through the blitz session. So, I have 3 questions for you. We're going to try to get you to answer them in 2 minutes or less.
Okay.
So, first one up, knowing what you know now, given everything you've experienced, the work that you do, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her a key piece of advice, what might that be?
Oh, gosh, so much. I think you can't please everyone. And like, I think that we hear that all the time. You're not for everyone, but like really, like I would shake her and be like, you're not going to please everybody. Like, especially with brick and mortars and like having a membership group that grew to 10,000 women, people have so many ideas and so many things to tell you and so many ways that they would run your business, or, all like, you should do this class and you should have your meetups at this time instead. You can't please everyone. Do, of course, like having some feedback is great, but do what you know is best for the people that you're serving.
Nice, nice. And then looking ahead, right? Based on the work that you're doing now, based on the work that and the impact that you desire to make. If you're looking ahead 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, however many years from now, and you are looking back at your life's work and the impact that you've made, what do you want the narrative to be?
That I was a catalyst in helping people show the fuck up. Like that I know that there are people out there. Like when I see my people on podcasts, when I see my people writing books, when I see them doing that thing that I know that they're scared of, like that is what lights me up. And I want to look back at all of those people and know that I didn't hide my gifts or, shy away from doing what I know that I'm meant to be doing, because I helped all of these people whose voices may not have ever been heard or would have taken way too long to be heard.
I love that. And then I'm a big reader. My audience is as well. I have this term, well, it's not mine, but I heard it and I keep repeating it. readers or leaders or readers. And so I'm curious, are there any books or a book that has been pivotal for you in your development, either personally or professionally?
Mm. I have really enjoyed recently Why She Buys. It's all about like the background and the psychology of marketing and sales for the female, the femme brain, and how we're wired and how we make our buying decisions. And it also has a lot of history about just the male dominated industry that is advertising and sales, and how they got so many things wrong because they never like listened to a woman's point of view in the boardroom. So it's very interesting. I love it.
Ooh, we'll definitely add that to the show notes for those who are listening in on the podcast. But if you didn't catch that and you're watching it live, it's Why She Buys. And then
Yes.
lastly, as far as, if for those who are listening or watching or will watch the replay, they want to get in touch with you or they want to connect with you and what you have going on, what's the best way? And, what can you leave the audience with in terms of ways to connect and partner with you?
Yeah, well, please immediately add me on LinkedIn. I hope I have so many requests as soon as this is over. I'm also on Instagram at Aria Leighty. And please join the plug. This is for the girls, the gays, and the theys. Like, if you want to be on more stages, if you want more podcast interviews, if you want to know what rooms to go in, and rooms that have been carefully curated by me that are safe, they're inclusive, they're anti-racist, you can show up as your full self. It's free. It is delivered to your inbox and it is so valuable. You can go to arialeighty.com/theplug and you'll get plugged right in.
Awesome. We'll definitely include that in the show notes as well. And before I let you go, any final words of wisdom?
Just start today. Don't wait till you have all of this experience or that you learn the new platform or you take another course. Start messy, be messy in front of your audience and let them grow with you and expand with you. Just do it right now. That thing. I know that somebody thought of that thing that they've been like pushing off. That's the thing I'm talking about. Go do that right now.
Great advice. Great advice. Because if you look at everybody who started, where they are today is not anything like where they started. And so we all have to be beginners at some point. So I love that advice. So thank you for those of you who are tuning in or watch the replay live. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or Aria here on LinkedIn. Be sure to connect with her. And then, of course, if you're listening on the podcast, I will include her LinkedIn and IG links, as well as links to the plug. Be sure to connect and to tap in. As you can tell, we are very passionate about this. We live this. And so if you have questions or if you just want to, if you just need a push,
Yeah.
please don't be afraid to reach out to either one of us, because I'm sure we've made all the mistakes, as well as having some of the, best practices that we've shared today. So with that, have a wonderful rest of the day. Today is International Women's Day. And so I am going to encourage those of you who are watching, and even if you're listening on the podcast and it's not International Women's Day, celebrate another woman today.
Yes.
There's so much in the world that either we are doing to each other or we are doing to ourselves to minimize our effect, minimize our impact. And so, for every woman who is showing up and who is doing the thing, we know that she has 10,000 pounds on her back. So
Yes.
today, especially whenever you're listening to this, give a kudos to another woman, extend support, extend love, extend grace, because the more we can collaborate with each other and partner with each other and uplift each other, the more we'll start to see the world shift in a positive trajectory.
Absolutely. Love that.
All right. With that, we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.